The childhood promise. The desert world was a place of silence and dust. The sun was always burning and the ground was cracked like old leather. Children grew up with chains on their wrists, learning early that freedom was only a dream. The humans and aliens were treated the same, like tools, not people. Soldiers walked among them with whips and iron sticks, making sure no one ever forgot who had the power. In this world lived a boy named Elias. He was no older than 10, thin from hunger, with hair the color of sand and eyes that still held a little fire. He had learned to work, to carry heavy loads, and to keep his head down. But deep inside, he had not given up. Every night when the masters were not looking, Elias would sit and watch the stars. He believed that the stars meant something more, that they were not only lights in the sky but a promise of a better life. It was during one of those nights that he met her. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin was soft violet, glowing faintly under the moon. Her hair was silver white, long and tangled from dirt, but it shimmered like water. Her eyes were wide, too big for her small face and filled with sadness. She was a slave girl, just like him, captured from a people who were treated even worse than the humans. Her name was Leora. Elias found her sitting alone, her chain tied to a wooden post near the work tents. She looked afraid, but also curious. When Elias stepped closer, she did not run. She only lifted her head and their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. The night wind moved through the dry sand, carrying the sound of distant machines. Then Elias whispered, "Why are you crying?" Her voice was soft, like the sound of rain, though she had never seen rain before. "Because I do not belong here." "None of us do." Elias sat beside her, though the guards would punish him if they saw. "Neither do I, but we are here. We have to be strong." She looked at him, surprised by his boldness. "You are human. You are not like me. Why do you talk to me?" Elias frowned. Even at his age, he could see the chains on both of them were the same. "Because chains are chains. It does not matter if your skin is violet or mine is pale. We are the same." Those words stayed in her heart. For a long time she said nothing, and they sat together in silence. The stars above them seemed brighter that night, like they were listening. Days turned into weeks, and whenever they could, Elias and Leora would meet in secret. They shared scraps of food, whispered stories, and held on to small pieces of hope. In the middle of a world of cruelty, they had found something rare: friendship. But friendship was not enough for Elias. One night, as they sat close together, he leaned toward her and spoke with a seriousness beyond his years. "One day," he said, "we will not be here. One day I will be free. And when I am free, I will find you. I will marry you, Leora. I will protect you." Her eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The word marry was strange on her tongue. Among her people, it meant something sacred, something strong, something unbreakable. "You would promise that?" she asked in disbelief. "Yes," Elias said firmly. "I promise. Even if the stars fall from the sky, I will not forget. You will be my wife, and I will be your husband." Leora looked at him for a long time, her silver hair glowing in the faint light of the moons. A small smile touched her lips, though it was mixed with sadness. "You are only a boy," she whispered. "What if you forget me?" "I will never forget," Elias answered. He spoke with such certainty that even she believed it, if only for a moment. But fate was cruel. The very next day, soldiers came. They dragged Leora away with other alien children, chaining them to carts. Elias tried to run to her, but a guard struck him down. Dust filled the air as the carts rolled away, carrying her into the distance. Through the blur of pain and tears, Elias saw her one last time. She was looking back at him, her small hand reaching out, but the chains pulled her away. He shouted until his voice broke. "I will find you. I promise." His words echoed across the desert, lost in the wind. After that day, Elias never saw her again. The years passed, and the memory of her face became both his greatest comfort and his deepest pain. He was just a boy when he made the vow, but the vow shaped him. In every chain he broke, in every hardship he endured, he remembered her. And somewhere far away across the stars, Leora remembered too. The return years passed like shadows across the desert. The boy named Elias grew into a man. His shoulders became broad, his hands strong and rough from endless labor. The fire in his eyes never died, though he learned to hide it from the masters. He worked, he endured, and in secret he dreamed of the girl he had once promised to marry. Leora. At night, when the campfires burned low, He would sit under the same sky and whisper her name. The stars had not answered him yet, but he never stopped believing that somewhere she was alive. Somewhere she remembered him too. The world had not grown kinder. The chains still rattled and the soldiers still ruled with iron. But Elias had learned patience. He had learned silence. He was no longer the small boy who cried when she was taken. He was waiting, always waiting. Then one evening the sky itself seemed to change. It began as a low hum, so faint that most thought it was the wind. But the hum grew louder until it filled the air, making the sand tremble. People stopped what they were doing and looked upward. Over the horizon a great ship descended, black against the orange sun. Its engines roared like thunder and its shadow spread across the ground. The soldiers shouted, ordering everyone to stay still, but fear rippled through the camp. No one had ever seen a ship like this before. It was not one of the master's transports. Its shape was sharp, almost alive, glowing with strange lights. Elias felt his heart pound. For reasons he could not explain, he felt the world about to change. The ship landed with a hiss of fire and dust. The ground shook beneath its weight and the air grew hot. A door opened and from the smoke figures appeared. They walked with confidence, their armor gleaming silver, their weapons unlike anything the camp had known. Among them was a woman. She stepped forward slowly, and as the dust cleared, Elias's breath caught in his throat. Her skin was violet, her hair silver, long and shining, moving like threads of light in the wind. Her eyes were large, bright, and filled with a power that was both strange and familiar. It was her, Leora. Elias felt his legs weaken. The years had changed her, but he knew her at once. The little girl he had promised to marry was gone, replaced by a woman who carried the weight of command. Soldiers walked behind her, their heads bowed as if she were more than a leader, almost a queen. The camp fell silent. Even the master's soldiers stared in confusion. Who was this woman who dared to walk into their land with such strength? Leora's gaze moved across the crowd, searching. When her eyes found him, she stopped. For a long moment, they only looked at each other, two souls caught in the same memory. Elias felt the world shrink until it was only the two of them standing there. The chains on his wrists suddenly felt lighter. The years of pain suddenly had meaning. She walked closer. Each step was slow, steady, and filled with purpose. The crowd whispered. The soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, but she did not stop. Finally, she stood before him. Her voice was no longer soft like a child's. It was strong, clear, and heavy with the weight of time. "You promised me," she said. Elias's heart raced. The words cut through the years like a blade. He remembered the night, the stars, the vow he had made as a boy. He remembered shouting as the soldiers dragged her away. And now here she was, standing before him, reminding him of the promise he had carried all his life. "I remember," he whispered. The people around them gasped. Some laughed in disbelief, others whispered in fear. The master's soldiers looked at one another nervously. Could it be true that a human boy once vowed himself to an alien slave girl? Leora's eyes never left his. "I came back," she said. "For you." The desert air grew heavy. Elias could feel the eyes of everyone burning into him. He wanted to speak, but his voice was locked in his chest. The silence broke when one of the master's guards stepped forward, shouting, "Take her!" But before the guard could move, Leora raised her hand. A flash of light shot from her palm, striking the ground in front of him. The sand exploded, leaving a burning scar. The guard stumbled back, his face pale. The crowd gasped again. Fear turned into awe. Leora lowered her hand and turned back to Elias. Her voice softened, though her eyes burned like fire. "You promised me," she repeated, "and I have come to claim you." The world seemed to stop. Elias felt torn between the boy he had been and the man he had become. The promise was real. She was real. But the question now was not only about love or vows. The question was about destiny, and deep inside, Elias knew his life would never be the same again. To claim the camp was frozen in silence. The wind moved the sand in small spirals, the only sound in a moment heavy with fear. Elias stood face to face with the girl he once knew, though she was no longer the fragile child he had promised to protect. Leora had returned to something else, something greater. Her eyes never left his. They were brighter than he remembered, glowing faintly, filled with strength and sorrow. He could see in them the memory of the boy he had been, the boy who had whispered to her under the stars. But there was more now. Anger, scars, power that made even the soldiers hesitate. "I have come back," she said softly, but her words carried across the camp like thunder. "And I have come for you." Elias felt the world close in around him. He wanted to speak, to tell her he had never forgotten, but the crowd pressed in like shadows. Human workers whispered, some mocking, some in awe. The alien slaves lifted their heads, hope flickering in their tired eyes. The master's soldiers shifted nervously, waiting for an order that had not yet come. Leora stepped closer. Dust clung to the silver of her hair, but she seemed untouched by it. "Do you remember what you promised me?" she asked. Elias swallowed hard. His voice cracked when he spoke, but the words came from the deepest part of him. "I remember. I swore I would marry you. I swore I would protect you." A ripple moved through the crowd. Laughter broke from the lips of one of the overseers. "A child's game," he sneered. Nothing more. But Leora's gaze cut through him like a blade. "A promise is never a game," she said coldly. "A vow given in chains is stronger than one spoken in freedom." Her words silenced him, and for a moment, no one dared laugh again. Elias's heart pounded. He wanted to reach for her hand, but fear held him back. She was no longer the small girl who sat beside him in the dust. She was something larger, something untouchable. Leora's voice softened. "I waited, Elias. Across stars, across years, I carried your words. When they took me from you, I thought the promise would die, but it lived. It carried me through fire and war, and now I am here." The camp seemed to hold its breath, then her tone changed. It grew sharp, strong like steel. "But I have not only come for you, I have come to claim more." The word sent a shiver through Elias. He looked at her, searching her face, trying to understand. "More?" he asked quietly. Leora raised her hand. The chains on the alien slaves glowed and shattered, falling to the ground with a heavy clatter. Gasps and cries filled the air as wrists once bound were suddenly free. The master's soldiers moved to attack, but Leora's guards raised their weapons, stopping them cold. Elias stared in shock. The girl he had once known was freeing them all. Her eyes returned to him. "I came to claim my people," she said, her voice ringing with power. "And I came to claim you. The promise you made was not only between us. It was between our worlds." Elias felt his knees weaken. He had never thought of his vow that way. He was only a boy then, only speaking from a heart that wanted to protect her. But to her that vow had grown into something larger, an oath that crossed races, an oath that could unite or break everything. The humans around him looked terrified. Some shouted for him to deny her. Others whispered that maybe this was fate. The master soldiers raised their weapons, ready to strike, but even they seemed afraid of her power. Elias's voice trembled as he whispered, "Leora, what do you want from me?" She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the whole night sky. "I want you to stand with me. Not as a worker, not as a slave, as the one who made the vow. As the one who said he would be mine." The weight of her words pressed into him. His heart battled between fear and longing. He saw the girl he had once held, and he saw the leader who stood before him now. Could he be both the man she needed and the boy who once promised love under the stars? The camp shook with tension. Humans looked ready to riot. The alien slaves looked ready to follow her into fire. The soldiers' hands twitched on their weapons. And Elias, he stood at the center of it all, torn between the life he knew and the destiny reaching out for him. Leora extended her hand. "Choose," she said. "Choose me or choose them. But remember, your promise cannot be broken." The world seemed to stop, holding its breath for his answer. The choice. The desert camp had become a storm without rain. Broken chains lay scattered across the ground, glowing faintly with the last touch of Leora's power. The alien slaves stood free, looking at her with eyes full of hope and fear. The humans, still bound, whispered nervously, torn between anger and awe. The master's soldiers gripped their weapons, sweat running down their faces, but none dared to move first. At the center of it all stood Elias. The hand of Leora was still stretched toward him. Her voice echoed in his mind, "Choose me or choose them." He felt the eyes of everyone on him, pressing against his chest like a weight too heavy to carry. A human man behind him shouted, "Do not trust her. She is not one of us." His words spread quickly, others nodding, their faces twisted with fear. "She will use you. She will betray you. Stay with your people." But then one of the freed alien slaves spoke, voice trembling but strong. She is hope. She is freedom. If he stands with her, we will follow. The crowd split like a wound. Humans against aliens, shouts against silence, fear against hope. Elias felt his heart tearing in two. He had lived his whole life among the humans, suffering with them, carrying their pain. But he had also lived every day with the memory of her, the girl with violet skin, the girl he had promised under the stars. He looked at Leora again. She had changed, yes. She was powerful now, her eyes glowing with strength, her very presence shaking the chains of this world. But he could still see the child she once was sitting beside him, whispering in the night that she did not belong here. Elias's lips parted, but before he could speak, a hand grabbed his arm. It was Jareth, one of the older humans scarred from years of labor. His voice was sharp and bitter. Do not be a fool, Elias. If you go with her, you will doom us all. They will slaughter us for your weakness. Elias shook his head. But if she frees them, she can free us too. Jareth's grip tightened. Do you not see? She is alien. To her, we are nothing. She remembers you only because of a child's vow. You will throw away your people for her? Elias pulled away, his mind spinning. His people? Her people. Two sides locked in chains by the same masters, yet now divided by fear. Leora's voice cut through the noise. Elias, he turned back to her. Her eyes burned, not with anger, but with something deeper. I have waited too long. I did not return to beg. I returned to claim what was mine. You are mine, Elias, you promised me. Do not let them break you. The words hit him like fire. He wanted to answer, but the world around him erupted. The soldiers moved first. One raised his rifle, pointing it at Leora. In a flash, one of her guards shot back, and the ground exploded in sparks. Panic spread through the camp. Humans screamed. Aliens shouted. Chains clattered as people tried to run. Amid the chaos, Elias stood frozen, his mind locked between two worlds. He remembered the laughter of humans he had grown up with, their faces worn and broken by work. He remembered the silver hair of the girl he had sworn to love, now standing tall, a leader stronger than anyone he had ever known. The promise pulled at him. His people pulled at him. Both sides demanded his soul. He closed his eyes for a moment, and in the darkness he heard his own voice from years ago. Even if the stars fall from the sky, I will not forget. You will be my wife. The memory shook him. When he opened his eyes, the camp was chaos. Leora stood unshaken, her hand still reaching out. Elias's heart slammed against his chest. He knew what choice would mean. If he took her hand, he would be marked a traitor by his people. If he refused, he would break the only promise that had ever given his life meaning. His breath trembled as he whispered to himself, If I choose her, I choose everything. The crowd screamed around him, soldiers shouting, weapons firing into the air. But Elias did not move toward the humans. He stepped forward, one step, then another toward Leora. Every eye turned to him. Some cursed, some cried, some prayed, and then he stopped, just before her outstretched hand. The air between them was heavy, alive with dust and light. Leora's lips parted, her eyes wide, waiting. But Elias did not take her hand. Not yet. He looked back at his people, then at her, and his voice rose above the noise. I will not choose as a slave. I will not choose in fear. I will choose in freedom. His words rang out like steel striking stone, cutting through the chaos. Both sides fell silent, waiting. And in that silence, Elias knew. Whatever he chose next would decide the fate of them all. The desert camp trembled with fire and noise. Smoke rose where blasts had struck the ground. Humans shouted in anger. Aliens cried in hope, and soldiers raised their weapons in panic. At the center stood Elias, his voice still echoing. I will not choose as a slave. I will not choose in fear. I will choose in freedom. The words seemed to freeze the chaos for a moment. Everyone turned toward him, waiting. Leora's hand was still reaching for him, her silver hair shining in the red light of the burning sky. Her eyes were fierce, but behind them Elias saw the same girl who had once sat beside him in the dust, asking why he spoke to her. He saw the child who had cried when they dragged her away. He saw the promise he had made. Elias's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His life had been nothing but chains and dust, yet that one promise had kept him alive. And now the promise stood before him not as a dream, but as destiny. He stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, as if the earth itself might break under his feet. The humans cried out behind him, "Traitor! Fool!" But he did not stop. The aliens held their breath. Even the soldiers hesitated, unsure of what his choice would mean. Elias reached her. The space between them vanished, and then, at last, he took her hand. The moment was like thunder. A silence fell so deep it swallowed every shout, every cry, every breath. Leora's fingers closed around his, strong and steady. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since her return, she smiled, not with power, not with command, but with the quiet relief of a vow fulfilled. "You are mine," she whispered. "And you are mine," Elias answered. His voice steady now. The ground shook again, but this time it was not from weapons. It was from the people. The alien slaves dropped to their knees, raising their voices in cries of freedom. Even some humans looked away in shame, seeing what he had chosen, feeling the weight of his courage. The master's soldiers tried to break the moment. One fired his rifle, the blast striking the sand near Elias's feet. But Leora raised her hand and a wall of light burst from her palm, scattering the soldiers backward as if they were children. The camp erupted. Chains shattered, weapons clashed, voices rose in a storm of rebellion. But at the center of it all, Elias and Leora stood together, hand in hand, unshaken. Elias looked at her, his voice low but clear. "What happens now?" Her eyes burned like twin stars. "Now we fight. Not for me. Not for you. For all of us." And Elias understood. His promise was no longer just about two children under the stars. It was about every life chained, every voice silenced. His vow had grown into something greater, a bridge between two peoples. The humans would call him traitor. The aliens would call him savior. But in the end, he was only a man who kept his word. The sun sank lower, painting the desert in fire. Elias squeezed her hand, and together they stepped forward into the storm. Soldiers rushed, chains rattled, voices rose, but they walked through it all like a flame through darkness. Their story had begun in dust and sorrow. Now it rose in fire and destiny, and above them the stars watched, silent witnesses to a promise that had defied time, chains, and fear.